Hello everyone, it's michael.azar here, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, we'll be discussing how to choose when to breathe when singing. So, breathing, of course, is one of, if not the most important aspects of singing, because the breath support is really what creates your sound. But there's another aspect. There's breath control, which is how long do you prolong your sound for, and when do you breathe. So there's a couple aspects and factors that really do inform when you should breathe. And a lot of people tend to mess this up. Either they will breathe at random places, or they'll just breathe whenever they're out of air. And there's a lot of factors that people don't take into consideration. So in this video, I'm going to teach you what to take into consideration when you're choosing when to breathe. So the first thing is making sure that you actually have good breathing technique. Don't do shallow breathing. The word is clavicular breathing, with your shoulders like. That's not an effective way to breathe. The reason why is because the majority of your breath comes from your diaphragm flattening and expanding the thoracic cavity space. What happens is that your lung is connected to this membrane called the pleural sac. And as you expand the volume in your thoracic cavity or rib cage, the lungs also expand and the air comes in. So if you don't know how to breathe with your diaphragm and your rib cage, you're not putting those together, that's the first thing. Learn how to breathe correctly. When you're breathing and it's like, that's not a correct way to breathe for singing. So first things first is to fix this. And then this will make everything else applicable. The second thing is to look at the sentence structure. So one, look at punctuations. Typically, punctuation points like commas, semicolons, question marks, periods are places for breathing. But oftentimes we have sentences that feel like run-on sentences, where you don't have a comma for a while. Well, even within a sentence fragment, you can have a lot of different things that are going on. You might have two parts to that fragment. You might have a question and an answer within a fragment. You might have a clear separation. Blah, 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 that, blah, 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 blah. Choosing to breathe, before that or after that really can change the meaning. If you choose to breathe before that, you get a cohesive sentence. After that, you get a sentence that doesn't make sense. So remember, choosing to breathe where it makes sense grammatically. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is not breathing too often. You should not be breathing way, way, way too much. So if you're choosing to breathe, whenever you feel like it, that's not going to work. Or if you're choosing to breathe at every punctuation point, sometimes that's not going to work either. Let's say you have a list. We have this word, comma, this word, comma, this word. Maybe breath isn't important. Maybe a lift or a small stoppage in the sound or separation in your voice might be the best option. There's a piece, it's like love, light, and life. Love, light, life. It's a little bit hard to separate them. If you put a breath, love, light, life, it's not going to work. The best option might be just to separate them. Love, light, life. It's not even a breath. It's just a little bit of a lift. You might find that's more important. A breath is a much grander pause. So, with that being said, make sure that you don't breathe too often and choose where the breath makes the most sense. Another very important aspect to reference when choosing when to breathe is phrasing. So, especially in Byzantine music, especially in the US, one of the worst habits I hear from many chanters is breathing very awkwardly in a way that breaks the phrase. You might sing like, blessed art thou, O Lord, teach me thy statutes. They might breathe like that, but that's not a good way to breathe because you completely disrupt the phrase. The best way to breathe without disrupting the phrase is prolong the note that is going to be the end of your phrase as long as it's supposed to go, and breathe at the very end, like this. Blessed art thou, O Lord, teach me thy statutes. Or, here's another one. Thou art the true peace to men, instead of true peace to men. The first one does not disconnect. The second one disconnects. And if you breathe like that, it's not musical. It's just a bad technique and a bad habit. You don't want to breathe like that. Some people might choose that for effect. But if you are doing that all the time, the effect becomes a bad habit. And you don't want that. So making sure you breathe in a way that is not breaking your phrasing is important. And then going into that, breathing as a function of the musical phrase is very important. So what that means if you are shaping a line or building a line to get to a climax point, you need to make sure that your breathing works with the line. If you're building up to a climax, like, there's a lot of pieces that have a climax, but like, if you take a hymn like, Christ is risen. Christ is risen from the dead by death. If you want that da 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 da, if you're going to breathe between those two fragments, the phrasing's broken. The whole point of that ornament there is to really build that phrasing up. If you choose to breathe between the two, it becomes very separated. The best option then, if you're going to breathe, is not to the ornament and breathe there, or continue until the ornament, the phrase finishes, and take a light breath using that technique of prolonging the syllable as long as possible to then connect the phrases together. So I want to put all these ideas together, breathing not frequently but following the punctuation, breathing that follows the phrasing, and then also breathing in a way that's not so aggressive or abrupt. So I alluded to this hymn a little earlier. It's the Doxasticon for matins in play second mode. So let's look at this melody here. It's a very beautiful melody. First, let's do it on ah, and I want to show you how is the actual phrasing of this. A couple things that will inform the phrasing, though, is the text. So let's look at the entire text. Thou who art the true peace to men of God, O Christ, while giving thy peace to thy disciples after thy resurrection, didst cause them to be affrighted, for they supposed they beheld a spirit. But thou didst quiet the trouble in their souls by showing them thy hands and feet, although yet they believed not. Although they yet believed not. But in partaking of food and bringing thy teachings to remembrance, thou didst open their understanding, that they might understand the Scriptures. And then if we keep going, and after thou hast assured them of the Father's promise, and hast blessed them, thou didst depart unto heaven. Wherefore, together with them, we worship thee, O Lord, glory be to thee. So if you read, I'll scroll down a little bit more. If you read the entire text, you get a very, very interesting, narrative, a mood that is occurring. What really this is, it's not a regular Plagal second lament, and it's not a Plagal second mystery. It's more like a Plagal second piece, a peaceful version of Plagal second. And it's very, obviously the text reflects that. But a lot of Plagal second hymns, can do a lot of these dramatic things. But this one, even musically, is not as dramatic as some of the other Plagal second pieces. So now how do we breathe in a way that matches that mood? And how do we phrase things that matches that mood? So both should work together. They should not work against each other. So starting here. Thou who art the true peace to man of God, O Christ. I had a bit of a hiccup there, but there's clearly a couple parts of the sentence. Thou who art the true peace to men of God, O Christ. This is really the first part of the sentence, and then this is like the second part. If you were to reverse them, you'd get the same meaning. O Christ, thou who art the true peace to men of God. That is technically the same meaning, but maybe the melody changes quite a bit. But in this case, though, if we were to phrase that just based off of that, we get this. No breath until man of God, oh Christ, and take a breath there. But if you look at this, the phrasing doesn't match the sentence structure. If you look at the phrase, it's really two parts. You have this part, thou who art the true peace to men of God, O Christ. The sentence breaks here, but the music breaks here. So let's choose where to breathe. Phrasing-wise, the best place to breathe is between peace and two. And then sentence-wise, the best place to breathe is here. My recommendation, breathe here and lift here. And let's see how that sounds. Thou who art the true peace to man of God, O Christ. That little lift gives that separation without breaking the melodic line. You can hear the phrasing makes much, much, much more sense when you breathe that way. Otherwise, then the phrasing and the words don't match. And that's not what you want. There was an interesting interview from Panagiotis Nichoridis, and he said the melody, to melos ine o logos, like the melody is the words. In this case, the way you phrase and shape the melody also informs how you phrase the words, but also means how you shape the melody. So if you sing without any shape, you're not chanting well, you're just singing the notes. I don't know about you guys, but like I can't listen to that in church and find that prayerful. You need to phrase things in a way that matches the mood of the text. In this case, it's peaceful. And if we breathe, the breathing has to be peaceful too. If we keep going, there's a couple things that happen here. While giving thy peace to thy disciples. Phrasing wise, what happens here? While giving thy peace to thy disciples. Sentence wise, this is the full part of the sentence. While giving thy peace to thy disciples after thy resurrection. It's already broken for us in the music. But here, there's two parts to that fragment. While giving thy peace to whom? To thy disciples. It's answering the question from the beginning. So in this case, the most reasonable place to breathe is here. If we keep going, you might argue that there's no reason to breathe here. And if you take a deep enough breath, you don't have to. But let's look here. Come after thy resurrection. At the end, I'm almost out of breath. But look here. If you were to breathe between these two, musically it doesn't work. And sentence-wise it doesn't work. Musically, you might be able to justify breathing here if you prolong that the full value. After, it's a guy, I mean. Thy resurrection. One place you cannot justify breathing is between the syllables in resurrection. Resurrection. Resur and erection. That's not a thing. It's resurrection. You have to put it all together. So again, choosing to breathe musically and sentence-wise. You have to choose where it works. The best option is don't breathe. But again, you have to really anticipate having a full breath of air in. Now if we look here, again, this is a very interesting phrase because it's long with a lot bigger melisma at the end. So we have to choose a good way to breathe. So let's look at the sentence here. That's caused them to be affrighted. So if I were to look at this, to be affrighted is an infinitive phrase, right? To be affrighted, it's not a conjugate, affrighted. To be affrighted is its own phrase. The first part, did cause them to be affrighted. The best place to breathe is between the two. Again, if you do them, that's not part of the phrase. If you were to get rid of all the words, I think there's a clear separation between the first part of the phrase and the second part of the phrase. Yes, it's, again, you can have that growing shape, but it's not like one whole phrase that goes from beginning to end. There is a separation. So it's important that when you do separate, you do look to musically what sounds the best. So phrase-wise and musically, this is the best separation. And then we keep going. For they suppose they beheld a spirit. If you can do it without, I kind of cut this a little bit, but if you can do it without breathing, that's the best option. Especially here, for they suppose they beheld a spirit. Because the sentence-wise, they supposed, what do they suppose they beheld a spirit, does not match the music. For they supposed they... That doesn't make sense musically, because the phrase wants to go down to that pa. If it was they, and you know, they beheld, and there was a lift there, then the words wouldn't make sense either. So the best option here is just take a big enough breath and breathe through all the way. If you can't do that, you gotta work on that, because you can build your breath support and stamina to do that. But that would be the best option there. And then here, quite a long, sentence and phrase. This goes all the way to here. It's not like, I don't know, there's sections and authors that change. You might argue that here is the end of the phrase, but it's really not, because the shape goes peak here, and then falls, and then really comes down here. So let's look at how this works. But thou didst quiet the trouble in their souls by showing them thy hands and feet. So clearly, there's two parts to this phrase, or this sentence. By showing them thy hands and feet. That is a clear, answer to the first part. But thou didst quiet the trouble in their souls. If you're going to breathe here, which I don't recommend, it's not that long, you should breathe between quiet and the. But musically, you don't have to. If you do without the words, la 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 la. Oh, sorry, wrong key. La 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 la. Clearly, it wants to go down to this the. That's where the phrase is going. Sorry about missing the thorides. I forgot that. But if we phrase it correctly, it works. So let's put it all together without breathing here and saving our breath through there. But thou didst quiet the trouble in their souls by showing them thy hands and feet. I ran out of breath at the end. So if you choose to do this, you might choose to breathe between hands and feet. Put a little bit of a breath, not a huge one, but a little bit, while keeping this the fully extended. You can sneak that breath in. And it works. Thy hands and feet. You can kind of justify the sentence as having two objects in that work. Let's keep going. So, from although. If you look at this thing, although yet they believe not, it's really not that long. Although they yet believe not. If you're going to breathe here, it's not really a good idea musically, and you don't have to. A lift might work. Yet believe not. But even a lift doesn't make sense grammatically. Although yet they believe not. Or although they yet believe not. Sorry for the mix-up. But it doesn't make sense to separate them. So why don't you just not do it? So that's what we're going to do. If we keep going. So the phrasing here really goes all the way to the end of the phrase. It's not like here and here. The phrase, if you were to do this a little faster, just so I can show you, because it's a long phrase. Da 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 da. Here I kind of added some extra stuff here, but it goes all the way to the end. And if you kind of break it apart, the phrasing doesn't work. So if you're going to breathe, here you could breathe, but don't breathe in a way that breaks the momentum. So when you breathe there, hold that 3 beats for the full duration and take a kind of a quick breath. So let's see how that sounds. But in partaking of food and bringing thy teachings to remembrance, Here I took a little bit of a breath because I didn't take a big enough one here. But again, if you hold out this 2 for the full 2 beats, you can sneak in that breath there, and it's fine. Same thing here. There's 2 parts relate to this phrase. Thou didst open their understanding. They open their what? Their understanding. But in reality, separating them is not worth it. Take a big, and my advice would be to take a deep enough breath there to get through this in one breath. Thou didst open their understanding. That takes you one breath. If we keep going, I know it's a long piece, but there's a lot of good things to analyze in here. Can, or here, the, the phrase, the sentence, that they might understand the scriptures. If you're going to breathe, stand the scriptures, you might choose to breathe between there. Let's try that. That they might understand the scriptures. Now I could have done that in one breath, but if you need to breathe there, you sacrifice the musical phrase, but it makes sense grammatically. If you say understand the scriptures, that's weird. Understand the scriptures is easier to understand. I didn't mean to make that a pun, but yeah. So again, make sure it matches the phrasing, but also the words. Sometimes you have to sacrifice. You might have to choose one over the other. So let's keep going. And if you look here, it's a long phrase. And after thou hast assured them of the Father's promise, it's a very long phrase, and it builds up to here. If you don't build up to there, it's not going to work. If you do assured them, if you disconnect this from this, the phrase just doesn't make sense. You have to keep them connected. But how do you connect them? You can breathe here, but if you build to that ka there, you keep the momentum going. Same as before. So let's try it. And after thou hast assured them of the Father's promise. I just saw it peaked. I'll lower it a little bit. Sorry about that. But here, if you build there, assured them of the fall. If you have that high pa in mind, you'll be able to get it. No problem. So let's keep going. No breath into here. And hast blessed them. And then, again, here, if you need to breathe, don't separate unto. Unto is the better place to breathe. Or you could just do it without breathing. Thou didst depart unto heaven. Again, if you need to breathe, breathe after 2, but don't separate 2. Because it's thou didst depart unto heaven. If you to it doesn't make sense. You have to keep that sound going for the sentence to make sense. So here, where it's a long phrase. Wherefore, together with them, we worship thee. This I recommend taking a very deep breath, because this phrase really builds. And to breathe, you really do break that momentum. And that's not what you want to do. So let's try it with only one breath here. Wherefore together with them we worship thee. Now I took a breath here. But look at this. Thee. You might choose to breathe between here. If you breathe between these two notes, then you cannot breathe between those two. If you don't breathe between those two, and you choose to breathe between there, choose one option. Don't choose both. Then you're cutting way too much. Again, you have lungs that work. Just trust that they'll work. You don't have to breathe all the time. Choose when to breathe. Again, there are multiple right options sometimes, but you have to choose one that is consistent. And you can't just do a bunch of it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And in the end, if you want to breathe, maybe breathe between B. Glory, or oh Lord, glory be to thee. Or just don't breathe. Take a deep enough breath. Glory be. If you breathe between the re and the B, the problem you get is that you're breaking the musical line. And again, we have to be considerate of the musical phrase. Da 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 da. Sometimes, if you need to breathe, you might have to sacrifice one. If you need to breathe, oh Lord, glory be to thee. You might choose to ignore the petasti. If you sing the ornament on the petasti, oh Lord, then there's no point in doing it, because the phrase is da 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 dum. If you choose to break that, that movement, that voice leading, that's kind of the maybe more formal word is. If you choose to ignore the voice leading there, oh Lord, then you actually observe the comma even better, and it makes more sense musically. So, in all, I went through this piece. It's kind of long, and if you wanted to go through this whole piece, you could. But in general, there's a lot of important aspects to think about when breathing. And it's not just breathe whenever I want or breathe willy-nilly. You have to be considerate to everything. There's many options. Some options are better than others. But again, you have to be consistent in how you choose it. And if you choose an option, it has to make sense towards the end of the phrase. If you choose an option but it doesn't make sense, maybe a measure later or two measures later, then it's the wrong option. So again, breathing is very important. And do not forget the musical elements and the grammatical elements that take place when you're considering breathing. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate if you liked and subscribed. Other than that, I'll see you in the next one, and have a great day.